Yeah, so token 2049. And I think my talk is about evaluating tokens, and specifically about evaluating, well, the largest token we have and we know, Ether. So I think we still have fairly poor methods to give those tokens a value, and I want to hopefully. How can I start? Okay, here we go. Show you kind of my model of how we try to give a value to Ether. So assigning value to smart contract tokens of smart contracts platform. I think the methodology could be applied or can be applied to other smart contract platforms using a discounted cash flow methodology. So the old wisdom was Ether has value because it's needed to pay miners for transaction fees, and my claim is that is false. Kind of to put it kind of drastically, I like to say, well, in theory, you could pay a miner via PayPal. So it doesn't matter kind of with what method you pay the miner. In the end, you just like want to convince them or to bribe them, pay them, whatever, that they will include your transaction into the blockchain. And via what channel and via what currency that payment is happening, there is not necessarily a good reason why that has to be or should be Ether, and that's actually the same thing for other blockchains and for Bitcoin, of course, as well. So there has been, I'm not sure whether it's true, but there has been rumors that, for example, Coinbase has an arrangement with miners where they kind of just upfront, arrange or pay them specific amount to be able to process a specific numbers of transactions to a given kind of upfront defined price. And again, this payment can happen via whatever, PayPal. So the way I look at it is the value from Ether doesn't come from it's being used as a payment token for transaction fees, but instead in the proof of stake world, only Ether holders will have the right to, in a way, sell transactions. So transactions on Ethereum are a scarce resource and a valuable resource, and we will look into that more, why. And in the end, only holders of Ether will have the ability to sell that resource, and therefore, of course, get whatever it's worth selling it. So here we are looking at how much are people actually paying for transaction fees, and this is a comparison of Ethereum and Bitcoin. It's on logarithmic scale, so the growth here is quite significant. Again, this is logarithmic scale, and you can see, like in the last year, Ethereum has catched up, and in some places has overtaken, or kind of. Well, is pretty much on par with Bitcoin. Just in comparison, is it worse? I mean, I tried to make it general, this talk, not just specifically about Ether, but currently it's simply not really worth looking at other platforms. The transactions fees paid on other platforms are just like non-existent. So basically it's just Ether and Bitcoin that have a significant fee market. So let's look at the numbers. In 2018, users have spent 148 million in aggregate in transaction fees, basically for the right to include transaction on Ethereum. And one thing I tried to develop some understanding what people are actually paying for. So I divided the transactions that you can do on Ethereum in very rough 4 categories. So the bottom category is just simple Ether transfers, and in a way that is the most boring. Most boring application. It's not. I mean, it basically that's not long-term sustainable. So I mean, if the thesis is people use smart contracts, and therefore that's what the value comes from, then we really should see growth in that category. So those are the last 2 years. So 2 years ago, almost 50% of the fees spent were just spent for pure Ether transfers, and again, that was at that point speculation. That's not kind of a sustainable reason for Ethereum to have value. However, now we have 3 more categories. So the yellow one is the rise of tokens. Is just like pure token transfers, purely like transferring one token, and that is still currently around 25%. But the most interesting categories are definitely the green one and the red one, and specifically the green one. So the green one is smart contract interactions, where something happens, kind of. Smart contract interaction including a token transfer. So that would be like using your tokens on a decentralized exchange or using your tokens on a decentralized lending contract. And I think that growth is quite significant. So 2 years ago, the category was more or less non-existent, and now it's actually the largest category. So now we are talking about roughly 40% or 38-ish percent of all of what's spent on fees is spent for those kind of transactions. So now, in the next slide, I will kind of use those numbers to present a kind of discounted cash flow. But I mean, really, disclaimer: I don't take the numbers too serious. I mean, there are a lot of assumptions, and if you change the assumptions, you can completely end up with a different evaluation. But just roughly, how could a discounted cash flow methodology look like? So 2017 and 2018, those are numbers we know. Those are historic numbers. 40 million have been spent in transaction fees in 2017, 148 in 28. So what we do in the discounted cash flow model, we give, future expected revenue. And again, like I argued, transaction fees will be revenue for Ether holders. We discount them, so the first year gets a factor of 1, and all previous years are halved. But then we also make assumptions about the transaction fees. And here I only use kind of 2 numbers. So one number is a growth factor of 3.5, and that's pretty random. And the other number is the total addressable market. So kind of for how long can we sustain this growth factor? What's kind of the total addressable market? And that's also a very random number. I actually took it from your report. So there was a report on like half a year ago that was kind of short on Ether and very bearish. So I took that number from this bearish report and applied it. I mean, it's a quite huge number, and you could. I mean, I will be careful arguing whether that's appropriate. But again, if you take those numbers, then you would kind of come up with a fair price of roughly double what it is right now. But again, it's very easy to change those numbers and kind of end up with different evaluations. It was more like about kind of what is the methodology, or how do I see that. So short sanity check. What would those numbers mean? So what would need to happen to kind of continuously see this growth? So see 500 million and 1.8 billion in the next years, specifically under the assumption that sharding and the increase of transaction volume will probably or very likely not come in the next 2 years. So I mean, of course, there are just two ways how to increase the transaction fees. One is do a single transaction needs to become more expensive, and the other one is like scaling, enable more transactions. And for the next 2 years, we cannot reasonably expect a significant increase of well, throughput. So right now, Ethereum supports 5 transactions a second. If with that number we want to we want to generate so much revenue in a way of transaction fees, that would mean an Ethereum transaction would cost $11.5. So that would mean kind of only very high value transactions. So that would be like large orders on decentralized exchanges, kind of orders of very least $1,000, if not more. That would mean kind of settlement transactions of layer 2 scaling solutions. After that, so hopefully in year like 2021, we will see the sharding kicking in. So the sharding scaling is more or less like, right now we have 1 Ethereum. With sharding we will have 1,024 shards, which all will have somewhat, more or less roughly the capacity of Ethereum. We will have some overhead because of cross-shard communication, so roughly we will get a scaling factor of 1,000. So on the one hand, now kind of with the previous model in mind, you could argue, oh great, now we can have 1,000 times that kind of transaction and 1,000 times that revenue. But on the other hand, you could argue, will sharding kill the fee market? So specifically, if we have even unlimited scalability, hopefully eventually, will there actually be a fee market? Will people be willing to pay $11 if transactions are not a scarce resource? So my next point is to argue there will be always a scarce resource, and that is what I call atomic state transitions. So the way you achieve sharding or scalability is by processing transactions in parallel. So, the transaction on this shard can be processed in parallel while another transaction is processed on that shard. However, if let's say you want on this shard there's an exchange, and on the other shard is also an exchange, and you want to trade on both, you can no longer do that atomically. So this is an example of a transaction that happened a few days on Ethereum, and kind of all those things are actually smart contracts, and you can see this is basically an arbitrage transaction doing arbitrage between 2 dexes, long story short, the transaction comes in, checks different prices on different dexes, and in the end does a simple arbitrage. So it sends 4.9 Ether here, 4.94 Ether here, gets 641 DAI back, uses those 641 DAI and gets 4.95. So a little bit more Ether back. And again, this is very convenient, of course, for market makers, because they can do those things completely risk-free. So this thing will either this trade will either go through atomically or fail, or they can just revert it. So they have 0 inventory risk. So that basically means exchanges that are on the same shard will effectively share the same liquidity. So long story short is, my argument is different shards will have, that's not an argument, that is fact, different shards will have independent fee markets, and I would argue the fees will be quite different, easily a factor of 100. So there will be a shard with the most liquid exchanges where those high value arbitrage transactions are happening, and probably that shard will have 100 times higher fee. And I would argue that's great, because it will basically allow all kind of applications on Ethereum. There will be the shards where, transaction fees will be very cheap, and where it will be feasible to do your CryptoKitties. And at the same time, the decentralized finance shard will just have much higher transactions. So an analogy is just like square meter prices in the United States. So you have your high density areas where everyone wants to be, and it's just much more expensive to be there than somewhere in the middle of nowhere. So last point is, so far I only argued for the value of Ether with the expectation of cash flow, so the expectation of transaction fees, and I completely removed the argument that's often brought up in the blockchain discussion around store value or monetary premium. And I personally do not like really think, I mean, for different reasons, I don't kind of buy into this theory. But if you do, then you can, of course, still make a point that Ether is, well, in a way will outcompete Bitcoin. And simply for the reason that this kind of income from transaction fees is basically just a bonus. So, yeah, I mean, as Ryan argues, it sets the floor. It sets some guaranteed basic value. I mean, a real-world example, like before Bitcoin, I used to buy a lot of those. Those are silver 10 euro coins. So they have a nominal value of 10 euros. You can actually buy them for 10 euros. But the silver is worse, or it used to be worse, around 7, 8 euros. So kind of it was a hedge. So if the monetary system completely breaks down, then probably those things are still worse than silver. So and you could, of course, make a similar analogy to Ether. So the nominal value is this monetary value, but you still have the baseline utility value. So last 2 slides, just a few observations that would confirm the presented assumptions. So first is transaction fees would need to start to rise again. Actually, for the last 4 months they were falling. If we kind of, in this model, of course, they would need to rise steeply, actually. Right now, gas prices are very much coupled or correlated with the value of Ether. I would argue long-term gas prices will decouple from the value of Ether, and eventually value of Ether will be a function of gas prices paid, but there will be no longer this tight correlation. That also means if Ether is used for store value or something and the price of Ether goes up, that does not necessarily mean that transaction fees go up. So Ether price should follow transaction fees, not the other way around. That is something I touched on earlier. So if we assume those higher transaction fees, of course, that will simply mean smaller transactions or low-value transactions will be outpriced. And fine. Okay, that I already said. Yep. Well, that's it. So thank you. Yeah. So just to mention, those are the sources. Blocksy is really good source for like Ethereum on-chain data. Well, and the other ones are probably more known. I also kind of tweet a lot about those stuff. So yeah, thank you.